So our next scenario, Lee is taking their first university English course. Lee is a multi-language learner and often makes small grammatical mistakes in their English writing. In all other contexts, like at work, they've been using Grammarly Pro to catch grammatical mistakes. And when they use it, they diligently go through the corrections one by one to take notes and improve their grammar. But this time, Lee spent so long on their first English essay that they ran out of time to do their individual corrections through Grammarly Pro. They decide to run their essay through ChatGPT with the prompt, correct grammar and rewrite in natural English, but do not change the meaning of points made in the essay. Should Lee acknowledge the use of ChatGPT, such as in a footnote or in the references page? And is this use of ChatGPT an academic integrity issue?
Kristin, you're muted.
Thank you. Our next engagement here is to rate your engagement with the following 4 statements. Everyone can see that. The Menti link is in the chat.
There's going to be some interesting debate here, I think.
I think so. That's what I'm going for. Okay, so who should we go to first in the discussion? And then I will. So it seems like there's about a middle ground around Lee should have asked for an extension or use the right site, anything but ChatGPT, which sort of tells me that there's, you can see here there's strong views on either end and then also in the middle. So we've got some controversy there. Nobody really seems to be, everyone seems to be agreeing here that if you put ChatGPT in a footnote, you're not supposed to do that. Yeah, who would like to say something first of our panelists?
I can talk to the point about Grammarly Pro and ChatGPT doing the same thing, because actually I'm not sure that that's necessarily true. So from a technology point of view, generative tools are based on what usual practice is. So if that means that poor practice is in the examples that it's had and the many examples that it's had, then that's what you're going to have coming up. And a tool like Grammarly Pro has been specifically designed for spelling and grammar improvement, and generative tools have not. So I think there may be some sort of issue there that Grammarly and ChatGPT at first glance look like they're doing the same thing, but in practice, I'm not sure the quality with ChatGPT would be the same.
Yeah, I guess my scenario was elaborating on the thinking of the student as making a little bit of a leap there. I do like Grammarly Pro, but even when that was coming in, there was definitely a discussion about whether it is misconduct. Thinking about courses where specific grammar lessons are the outcome, and you're supposed to spot your own errors. If Grammarly Pro is doing that, it was considered to be an issue, but you do learn from them, correcting yourself through that platform. So it is interesting.
So that comes back to the point that if it doesn't conflict with the instructor's intent for the learning, the course outcome or the program learning outcome, then it's probably okay. But if it conflicts, like you just said, well, then it's definitely not okay. You know, if you're supposed to be identifying these yourself and you're using another tool to do it for you, then that's contravening what learning is intended. And this is really complicated, these discussions, in terms of what the intent is of the learning outcome. And I'm not sure like how many students really look at their learning outcomes if they're not required to. And I think that might be something that could be taken away from this, that actually now, in terms of integrity, you're going to have to be a little bit more, going to have to go and find out these things and be aware of what the intent of the course is in a way that you might not have done before.
Since this has a lot to do with writing, I'm wondering if Sarah Jane wants to weigh in here. Because we often, we've done these scenarios before, but without the emphasis on AI, and there's a lot going on into the scenario that could have, that is also supporting the student, to become a better writer.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you already mentioned, Kristin, that there was debate and still is debate about the use of something like Grammarly. So it's very interesting because some professors may want you to use Grammarly because it will make the reading of the assignments easier for them. And other instructors, especially in English courses, may not allow the use of Grammarly in their course. So keep in mind that it could depend on the course or the field that you're studying in. And this is why asking is important for any type of corrective tool, that sort of thing. Also, to elaborate on what you were saying, Stella, the use of ChatGPT for something like this, I haven't tried it myself, so I'm not actually sure, what the result would be, but it does have the danger of changing the style a lot of your content that you created yourself, your writing. It could really change the sentence structure a lot, the tone, and also your instructor will not know, like they'll probably be able to tell that this went through generative AI. It's quite likely they'll be able to tell, but they won't know if Lee used it to generate the content completely, which would be against the misconduct policy. It would count as plagiarism, or if Lee just used it to brush up on their grammar kind of thing. Either they might not be able to tell, but they would be able to tell that it went through that system. And they might assume that it was used to generate the content. So you do have to be very careful.
I'll just throw out one of the questions that's going on in the scenario, which is about citing and referencing the use of ChatGPT and what we're thinking about for that. Maybe Elaine?
Yeah, thanks, Kristin. The library has created a citation guide, and I'll put all of these links into the chat here in a minute. And the citation guide is useful when you're trying to learn how to cite something in a particular style. The guide has recently been updated to include information about citing generative AI in the 3 major styles so APA, Chicago, and MLA. And as I said, I'll put those links into the chat. But picking back up on the conversation, the scenario says that Lee often makes small grammatical mistakes in their English writing. And the question that I have, that this raises for me, is it worth having ChatGPT completely ruin the style or change the style? And is it worth possibly appearing to have plagiarized everything because the tone is so different, as opposed to just submitting the assignment with those small grammatical mistakes? Because at least that the professor would recognize that is more authentic to the learner, based on the way that the essay has been written, as opposed to something that's been generated by an artificial intelligence tool that is obviously not going to present it in the same way.
Yeah, this is what connects to something that comes up at all of these sessions, which is time management. This student is not turning to this supportive tool out of a good feeling and planning ahead or anything like that. We're in kind of a rough spot. So if you need help with chunking your assignments, breaking them down into smaller pieces, talk to your instructor, talk to the right site, get an appointment with a librarian to help with research, all of these things ahead of that due date, that final submission time, when we might turn to something we wouldn't normally turn to. And then that gives you more time for the learning to really sink in and to get the most out of your course, right? It's not just about saying don't use this, do use this. We really are trying to get the most out of these assignments and your time so that you can build on that in your future courses. So we really want to avoid that panic at the end of it. Last thoughts on that scenario?
There's an idea
Okay.
that keeps coming to me, is that I would appreciate if the student would submit, or Lee would submit the assignment without ChatGPT and telling me that I was going to edit it, but I ran out of time. Can I please get a few more hours? But in case I don't, this is the last version that I'm going to submit. This shows me that the student is trying, is learning, and is like something happened and they couldn't finish on time. So that's what I would appreciate.
Great.